Hello, everybody, and welcome to my beginner's guide of verses. Today we'll be talking about a variety of topics while going as in depth as I can, covering all of them. These topics, of course, being map voting, the shop, game modes, all different special infected and what their special abilities are, as well as general controls of the game. With all this being said, let's hop straight into the tutorial. The lobby is a part of the game where you'll probably be spending the majority of your time at, it having three areas. A casino, which currently offers no form of content, map voting area where players can vote for maps, and the shop. Inside the voting area, players can choose between three separate maps that they wish to vote for, each map having a specific game mode attached to it. More on that in my game modes part of the video. Moving over to the other side of the lobby is the shop, which is arguably the second and more important part of the lobby. In the shop, players are presented with two UIs, a shop UI and an inventory UI. The inventory is primarily just meant there as a way for you to equip your items, though as far as I'm aware of, there is no organizational method as to how they are sorted, so have fun trying to find what you're looking for if you have a lot of items in your inventory. Though, you could equip items directly through the shop, so the inventory is kind of a redundant feature. Clicking the shop icon will bring you to a smaller UI of 6 different buttons, those of which being primaries, secondaries, melees, armor, items, and exclusives. For the sake of this guide, armor will be ignored as well as exclusives, as armor is currently not implemented into the game and I kind of hope that it never does, because armor really isn't necessary. As well as exclusives, because currently, as of recording this video, there's no ongoing events, so there's no way to obtain any of the old or potentially any new exclusive event items that are coming in the future. Starting out with primaries, it's good to get a good primary that you're both used to and you like using, as it's going to be your workhorse that you use throughout the entirety of most matches. One caveat to this, though, is that primaries are expensive, so getting a primary that you like using can be a difficult feat, especially if you're a beginner. So, something that I would recommend doing in the meantime is getting a much more cheaper option, like what I'd personally recommend, the MP5, boasting decent damage with decent fire rate, with some lackluster recoil but high accuracy and ammo, all for an affordable price. If you're strapped for cash, which you likely are, then secondaries might just be your next best bet. There are currently 4 pistols that are inside the game. But wait, hold up, you might be asking yourself, there's only 3 pistols on screen, so where's the 4th pistol? Well, that's where the game generously provides you with a blessing, but it's secretly a curse in disguise. If you have nothing equipped in your secondary slot, then the game will generously provide you with a secondary. This secondary is horrible. I'd recommend replacing it as soon as possible, as while it does boast high ammo and reserve ammo, that's basically where all of its blessings run out. It has horrible accuracy, along with horrible recoil, and not great damage. Would highly recommend replacing it at your earliest convenience. As for my personal recommendation, mine would probably have to go out to the Glock 17. Mostly just due to its higher damage, slightly slower fire rate, but for less recoil and more accuracy, along with the same amount of ammunition that you would get with the free gun. After you have money, well, the other two options are really just up to you as to what you would prefer over the M911 or the Desert Eagle, though I prefer the Desert Eagle. Now moving on to melees, while they may not be as important as primaries and secondaries, they still are a vital part of your arsenal, as they are a very important counter to not only one of the unique zombies, but also to common infected. More on the zombies and the unique infected towards my zombie part of the video. While melees might be really great at countering common infected, outside of that, they're really not very useful, as unless you completely run out of primary and secondary ammo and have no other option but to use it, I would recommend just personally going to the nearest ammo pile and grabbing some ammo, because melees really don't do that much damage. If I were to give a personal recommendation, though, as to what type of melee to get, really it's all up to choice. But if you're looking for the best case scenario melee weapon that will help you in most scenarios, then the katana is probably the most reliable and best melee weapon to get. Now lastly, talking about items, there's really not much to talk about. Because, well, there is basically no items or utilities inside the game. Speaking of which, there are 2 different types of items and utilities. Items are the Robar and the gummy vitamins, and for utilities, there are medkits and defib units. As for what I'd personally recommend, well, there's really not much to personally recommend, as again, there's little to no choice or variety inside the items department. But if I had to give my personal recommendation, it would probably be the row bar for the increased speed that you get for consuming it, and defib units to revive teammates from the dead. Now, lastly, some last minute stuff that I wanted to talk about before we move on to game modes. Items in the shop have two different ways of being purchased. Either you can rent them with normal coins, or you can buy them permanently with premium coins. Normal coins can be earned through killing infected and collecting them off of their dead bodies, while premium coins can really only be obtained through two consistent ways, either winning game modes as your respective team, or killing a tank and collecting its coins that it drops from its dead body. Inside of Versus, there are 5 game modes, those of which being Survival, Rescue, Classic, Infection, and Objective. Starting out with Survival, it's the most basic game mode out of any of them and therefore is the most beginner friendly. For the survivors, their goal is to simply survive until the timer reaches 0, indicated by the timer in the top right corner of the screen, and the infected's goal is to kill all the survivors before the timer reaches 0. Do note though that so long as there is one survivor that is not downed, then the match will still continue, but once every survivor gets downed or is dead, then the match will end in an infected victory. Rescue is kind of like Survival, but with its own twist added onto it. Just like Survival, survivors are intended to survive until the timer reaches 0, and the infected's goal is to try and stop them before that happens. But once the timer reaches 0, instead of the match ending, survivors must make their way towards a rescue vehicle, which is both highlighted to survivors and infected. So just go towards the outline and you'll probably be fine. So long as at least one survivor makes it into the rescue vehicle, the survivors will win. Do note though that the infected can win if nobody makes it into the rescue vehicle. Classic is again just another iteration of Survival but with some additions added on top of it. But if they do manage to kill a survivor, they will turn into a zombie instead of being a spectator. You can quickly see how this could turn into a snowball effect, as soon as one survivor dies, that's one less survivor and one more infected that's working towards a demise. Additionally, item piles will spawn around the map. This is the only game mode in which items will naturally spawn on maps. Outside of those changes, everything is exactly the same. The survivors must survive until the timer reaches 0, and the infected must stop them from doing so. There's no additional notes, so let's move on to the next game mode. Infection is one of the more unique game modes. While it does see the same premise of the survivors surviving until the timer reaches 0 and the infected needing to kill them, in this game mode, instead of spawning in as the usual infected, you'll instead spawn in as one of 2 separate zombies, those of which being the zombie and the husk. I will cover these 2 infected more on my infected part of the video, but just know that they are only exclusively seen in this game mode. Do note, though, that survivors in this game mode are limited to only their melee weapons, items, and secondaries. Their primaries and utilities are disabled in this game mode. Objective is quite an interesting game mode, as it takes the premises of both survival, rescue, and a bit of its own identity and throws it all in a blender in hopes of creating something unique, in which it does. Survivors are tasked with grabbing gas cans and pouring them inside a generator, which is highlighted to both survivors and infected. Same goes to the gas cans that are littered throughout the map. Once all survivors manage to grab all the gas cans and dump them into the generator, they must survive until a rescue vehicle comes to pick them up. Of course, the infected's goal is to stop them from doing this or from entering the rescue vehicle. Do note, though, that while having a gas can in your hand as a survivor, your stamina will constantly drain, and unless you could put a gas can down after enough time, you will drop it due to lack of stamina. You can also not jump with gas cans as you will drop them. The Boomer is one of the few support infected inside the game. His goal is to assist his team by vomiting on the survivors and temporarily disorienting and blinding them in the process. The Boomer's melee attack is really just meant as a way to get in some extra damage before you die. His vomit ability allows him to spew out vomit, and if it hits a survivor, they'll be covered in bile, which temporarily blinds them, makes them take a bit of damage, and alerts a horde. The horde will only attack the people that got vomited on. Additionally, when the Boomer dies, if any survivor is standing near him when he dies, they will also be covered in vomit too. Do note, though, that the Boomer is tied for having the lowest HP in the game, that being just simply 100. The Spitter is the other support infected. Their goal, similarly to the Boomer, is to assist their team but in a slightly different way. Instead of vomiting on the survivors and temporarily blinding and disorienting them, their goal is to mainly meant to support your pinners via spitting on survivors that are either downed or getting pinned, as the longer that a survivor stands inside your spit, the more damage that they'll take over time. So if a survivor briefly steps inside your spit, they're not going to take much damage, if any at all. But if you manage to keep them inside their spit, ergo they can't move or they're down because they're getting pinned, then you'll get the maximum amount of damage from that. Do note though that the Spitter also has 100 health, so they're very vulnerable. The Hunter is one of the few pinners inside the game, having the ability to leap high into the sky via first crouching and then using his ability, leaping in whatever direction that your cursor is facing. If you manage to leap onto a survivor, then you'll begin clawing and tearing them apart. Unless the survivor or you die, there's no way to stop. The Hunter also has the additional ability of clinging onto walls. Simply leap into a wall and you grab onto it for a couple of seconds, after which you have the ability to either leap into another direction via using his ability again, or just simply sitting still, after which a couple of seconds, the Hunter will fall into the ground. The Hunter, having 250 health, is still pretty vulnerable though. The Smoker is one of the few ranged infected inside the game. His ability must meet 3 criterias first before he can use it. First, you must be looking in the general direction of a survivor. Secondly, there must be nothing obscuring your vision between you and the survivor. And thirdly, the survivor must be within range. The range being quite a far distance, but if you're looking directly at a survivor and there's nothing blocking you, then it is likely that you're too far away from them to grab them. If all criteria are met, then a red diamond-shaped box will appear around the survivor. Simply clicking on the survivor to shoot out a tongue, and this tongue will automatically home onto the survivor, no aiming required. After which, you will begin slowly reeling in the survivor, after which point the survivor will slowly be choked to death. As Smoker, your best bet is to stay up on high ground and as far away from the survivors so that they can't easily shoot you. The Charger is one of the main brutes of his team, having a high amount of HP, but where he really shines is in his ability, allowing him to charge directly forward, wherever he is looking. The first survivor that gets in his path, he'll grab. Any further survivor that gets in his path will simply take some damage and get knocked around. After he has charged enough distance and hasn't run into anything, he'll begin slamming the survivor into the ground. This can happen earlier if he manages to run into a wall. A jockey more or less is a mix between a support and a pinner. Unlike most other pinners like Charger, Smoker, and Hunter, he does not permanently pin the survivors and will let go once they go down. He cannot pin down survivors. While you are pinning a survivor, you can move them in any direction. This can be used on specific maps with death pits to steer survivors directly into a death barrier. While Jockey might be small and fast, he does not have very much health, making him very vulnerable. The tank is the main brute of the infected team, having an insane amount of health and dishing out quite a lot of damage with his melee attack. Furthermore, his melee attack can be used to knock around survivors so long as they aren't downed. In addition to that, it could also be used to punch around punchable objects. These objects usually are either cars or trees. These are absolutely game-winning items and can instantly down survivors. So if you see a tree in a very advantageous position, take the shot. There's no reason not to. Tank's ability allows him to throw a boulder which can ragdoll any survivor that gets hit by it. The boulder can be hard to aim, so practice is going to be needed. Lastly, Tank gets faster the lower his HP goes, so if you're low on HP, you can quickly rush survivors. Zombie is only accessible inside the infection mode. Zombies only have one attack, that being Claw. This attack does a random amount of damage, somewhere around 10 to 25 damage. The zombies also have the ability to sprint. Simply press the sprint key of whatever device that you're playing on and you'll begin to run. Zombies also have the ability to mantle up walls, though this really isn't too useful. The more important bit is that zombies will give a status effect called infection whenever they hit a survivor. This effect, upon reaching 100%, will immediately kill the survivor and turn them into a zombie. After they die, the status effect will also stop the survivor from going down, as the next time that they go down, the status effect will kill them. Even if the status effect is 0%, they will die. The status effect will slowly go down if nobody hits the survivor after enough time. Husks are the other zombies that are only found inside of infection mode. These zombies have about a 15% chance of spawning in whenever a zombie dies and respawns in infection mode. They're functionally the exact same as zombies with only 3 differences. Firstly, their health isn't randomized whenever they spawn in. Secondly, they cannot sprint but can still mantle up walls. And thirdly, similarly to the Toxic Zombie, they have an Enrage ability. Press the ability button to activate your Rage ability, and then press it again to lunge forward. It's functionally identical to Toxic. Note, whenever a survivor dies inside of Infection mode and respawn, they are always guaranteed on their first life to be a husk. Now from here on out, I am going to be talking about Game Pass Infected. These Infected can only be used if you purchase the unique Infected Game Pass, found inside the game's store. Sinner is kind of a weird infected, as he's like Jockey. It's a mix of both support and pinner. His ability allows him to grab a survivor and slowly choke them out. If the survivor takes at least 50 damage from you choking them out, then they are guaranteed to die, skipping being downed and becoming unrevivable, meaning that the defib unit cannot even save them. But while choking a survivor, you are very vulnerable, as you are slow to a crawl and can barely move. He also does have a secondary ability that can be accessed via crouching and using his ability, making him cloaked and very hard to see, while also dramatically increasing his speed. Do note, though, that this ability will eventually wear off after enough time, and also if you take any damage while in this form, you'll become immediately uncloaked. Ryder is like a charger, but if he couldn't pin. Well, kind of. You see, similarly to the charger, Ryder's ability allows him to charge directly forward wherever he is facing, only stopping after he's charged a great enough distance or he slams into a wall. However, similarly to Sinner, he does have a secondary ability, allowing him to slam survivors into the ground so long as they are either ragdolled or downed. He cannot do this to a healthy survivor, so they must first meet one of those two criterias. In addition to him being able to slam survivors into the ground and charge forward, he also has a shield that will protect him from bullets, though the shield can be a bit buggy and after enough damage will eventually break. Slimer is a support infected that has the ability to sling goo, fireballs, or snowballs at survivors. He can throw them via using his ability, but to change form and access the other throwables, you must first crouch and use your ability similar to Sinner. Doing so will also, in addition to changing your projectiles that you throw, change your melee attack and the slime that you leave behind, as survivors that walk in your slime will take some damage. For reference, throwing a goo ball at a survivor will blind them similar to Boomer. Fireball will set the survivor on fire, dealing some damage over time, and Snowball will completely freeze the survivor, stopping them from moving or using items for a few seconds. Toxic is a zombie that has the ability to pin survivors, but first you need to use it, as using your ability first will initiate your rage phase. During this phase, your movement speed is significantly increased from what it normally is, and the next time that you use your ability, instead of activating your rage mode again, you will lunge forward. The distance of this lunge is further increased if you jump and then lunge. If you grab a survivor, you will begin biting at their hand. After the timer above your head expires, you will immediately explode and die, as well as leaving behind a gas. If any survivors walk into the gas, they will begin taking damage over time, similar to the Spitter Spit. Alright, lastly, we are going to be talking about the general controls of the game. Crouching as a survivor is a good way to avoid infected by hiding behind objects, but it also makes shooting quite a bit easier, as you're not moving around as sporadically as you would be standing, so it makes tracking infected a lot easier. As infected, crouching isn't as useful, but it's a mandatory part of two infected's abilities, that being Sinner and Slimer. It could also be used as tank to squeeze into tight narrow spaces. The button to crouch for PC players is Control, and the button to crouch for console players is down on the D-pad. For mobile players, it should be a button on screen. Reviving fellow downed survivors is a mandatory part of the game. However, the game never explicitly teaches you what the buttons are to revive a survivor. Mobile players luck out in this department as the button should be on screen. But for PC and console players, the answer that you're looking for is for PC, the button to revive is R, and for console players, the button to revive is X. And lastly, if this wasn't already obvious, this is a team-based game, meaning that you need teamwork and cooperation for things to work out well. You could try and play a lone wolf, but you're probably not going to perform very well. So work with your team, cooperate with them, and you should eventually win a match. And that's the tutorial. I wish I could have added more, but I wanted to talk about as many things as I can that I think new players don't end up learning when they play the game. And I mean, I can't blame them, because again, there's no tutorial in the game, as of me recording this video. But anyways, if you found this tutorial useful, let me know in the comments down below. I really do like hearing your feedback. And with this all being said, I hope you have a great day.